Welcome back to the Energy Report here on Clean Skies News. I'm Tyler Suiters. Solar energy, it is among the renewable resources most often cited by lawmakers and administration officials alike, and their standard line about clean energy usually goes something like this, and in this order: wind, solar, and geothermal. Well, as for solar, back in May, the Obama administration announced about $120 million in DOE funding from the Recovery Act for solar technologies. So the question's now, what comes next for the industry, and where does it happen here in the U.S.? Joining me now to talk about this is Roger Efird. He is CEO of Suntech America, also the current chairman of the Solar Energy Industries Association here in Washington, D.C. Roger, a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Tyler. Glad to be here.
To be specific, $117.6 million in DOE funding, or at least through the department from the Recovery Act. Research, development, and deployment are the sub-headlines that DOE handed out. Where does this go? How does this help you?
There's all kinds of stimulus monies coming down. And last week, the Treasury Department gave for the first time gave the guidelines of how they're going to handle the Treasury Grant Program. Treasury Grant Program is anyone taking solar in lieu of the 30% investment tax credit that's available for solar. If you don't have the tax appetite, you can literally get a tax grant from Treasury. We will see that start to be implemented by about the fourth quarter. That will certainly, with the economy being in the situation it is, the tax appetites just aren't there the way they were the last couple of years.
And the rumblings for this, Roger, really started under the previous administration, didn't they? Once you received that extension of the tax credits for longer term on the back end of the stimulus funding at the end of last year, then all of a sudden we realized tax credits aren't good if you don't have the revenue to begin with, correct?
Absolutely. It was October, I think it was October the 6th. We get an extension of the 30% investment tax credit. We get the $2,000 cap that was on residentials. We get that removed, and things look great. And within a couple of weeks, the economy really started to fall apart. So since that time, that investment tax credit has not had the effect that we hoped it would. The Treasury Grant Program should go a long way in correcting that.
What comes next for you, or what is in your sights regarding Washington? Is it legislative action, the potential enacting of a renewable electricity standard and a cap on carbon?
Well, the climate energy bill that was just passed by the House has got two things in it that we think are very important for solar. First is the national renewable energy standard of 20% by 2020. That's important. To date, 24 states plus the District of Columbia have passed renewable portfolio standards. So half the country basically has some kind of standard they're working to now. The other half does not. 28
different states, though, mean 28 different RES positions in place.
Already, yes.
But all of them different is my point.
All of them different. The nice thing about the House bill was that any of these states that already have renewable portfolio standards that are larger and more comprehensive than the national standard, the national standard just sets a baseline. But what it does for us is it opens up 25 new states. We end up with the entire United States as a potential market for solar rather than just a few states.
Let's talk about what your company in particular sees here in the U.S. This is a Chinese-based company, yet you have plans for a major facility build-out here in the U.S.
Yeah, we're hoping to be the best of my knowledge, maybe to be the first Chinese company to export jobs to the U.S. Which is, you know, and I think what I see is the same thing that we've seen in the automobile industry. As the market in the U.S. comes on, you'll find more and more of the manufacturers from outside the U.S. will start building facilities in the U.S. We announced a few months ago that we would put our first factory outside of China and that it would be located somewhere in the U.S.
And are you still sorting through the finalists as we speak?
Yes, we're down to about 5 states that we're talking to at this point. Some of them on the East Coast, some of them on the West Coast. And I think within the next few weeks we will narrow that down and probably announce a site within the next 60 days. We have the actual assembly line equipment is already up. It's purchased. It's been installed in China. It's up and running in a beta test now. So we think within about 6 months of finding our location that we should be able to actually start manufacturing. So we're on a very fast track.
Roger, what does China have in place, either economically or policy-wise, that makes it able to export an energy industry like this, whereas the U.S. can't yet?
I think there are a number of advantages that a manufacturer has in China, and this probably applies to more than just the solar industry. If you locate a factory in the right province in China, you can get some significant economic incentives for creating jobs, just like you can here in the United States. Obviously, you've got the lower labor rates in China. I'm not sure that in solar that is that big a play, however. The labor content for a solar module is only around 10% of the total cost of the module. So solar is not a high labor content when you're talking about manufacturing, but you've got low G&A expenses. You've got the ability to expand very rapidly. You get a lot of cooperation from the government.
Final question, Roger. We hear many complaints on Capitol Hill from the opponents to nuclear energy about the cost per kilowatt hour, the potential cost for the consumers. It seems as though the solar industry is up against a similar barrier in terms of public perception and some of the realities about the cost here. You're right, a couple of things there. It is generally understood that generating from wind, the cost per kilowatt hour is less expensive. I think you have to look at some other factors with solar. Solar can be a distributed energy. We talk a lot about the need for increased transmission lines, etc. Solar is probably the photovoltaic technology in solar is probably the only technology out there right now that really can be deployed on the rooftops. And then the idea of long distance transmission lines becomes less important for solar. If you take into account the fact that solar doesn't necessarily have to have the long distance transmission lines unless you're talking about utility scale type solar projects. You add to that the fact that solar generates electricity during the time of day when utility companies have their highest cost to generate. In August, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, solar is cranking away. That's also just about the time that the utility company is generally paying more for the electricity that they're buying than they're selling it at. All right, Roger Efird is CEO of Suntech America and the current chairman of the SEIA. And please keep us posted on the big announcement regarding your new facility here.
Be glad to.
Thank you so much, Roger. Susan, back to you.
All right, thanks, Tyler.